BYD is the world's largest EV manufacturer, and the Sealion 7 is their Tesla Model Y competitor. So in this video, we're gonna find out how far it will go on a full charger battery at 120 kph or 75 miles an hour for those of you who use Freedom units. But as the title suggests, things went far from smooth, really far from smooth. It is a beautiful day today to be out doing a range test. Sunny blue skies, dry roads, and yeah, I can't wait for spring. Though this year's winter hasn't been nearly as cold or as long as last year's winter. Like, it hasn't been insane. Like last year it was so cold. Now it's currently a degree Celsius outside, which isn't bad. And being mid-February, hopefully it's gonna get milder and milder as we approach spring. So this car does not have a trip computer. You can reset for a trip to read out consumption and information like that, average speed and whatever. It only has the average consumption the past 50 kilometers, and after 50 kilometers our average consumption is 28.0 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. So at the end of the video we're going to do a calculation that I'm not a fan of, and that is measuring the used battery percentage according to the car. The reason I'm not a fan of that is because it's not linear. In my opinion, the only reliable way to actually calculate range is to use the battery pack size, the usable capacity, and then you use the average consumption over that trip, and then we do correction for discharging losses and heat losses, as we usually do. So this test may be a little bit less accurate than we normally test, but I mean, it's fine. We have to work with what the car gives us. So this car on the motorway at 120 kilometers an hour is relatively comfortable. In this test now, we're not only doing range tests, we're not only going to see what charging speed we get after a few hours on the road with passive heating, passive conditioning of the battery, but we're also doing instrumented testing of road noise at 80 kilometers an hour, 100 and 120. And I can say at 80, this is relatively quiet, but once we get going, there's a lot of noise off the wing mirrors especially. So not the quietest car once you get going. So I'm just gonna continue on now, guys, for about another half an hour, and then we're gonna turn around. I'm gonna give you guys an update once we hit our turnaround point in Muel. We are now approaching our halfway point here in Muel, so we're gonna exit the motorway and then we're gonna go on the on-ramp on the opposite direction. So after 99 kilometers and halfway, our average consumption the past 50 kilometers though is 25.5 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. But we're down to 62% stated charge now. We started at 92, so I'm gonna put that on the screen for you guys, the actual calculations. But hopefully the consumption is going to get lower. But according to the wind map, we do have a headwind of about 2 to 3 meters per second. So on our way back now, that should give us a slight push in the southward direction. And also, guys, I had quite a scary episode here with the auto steer with the ADAS that I'm going to talk about and show you guys at the end of the video, because yeah, it happened once and then it happened 5 more times without me being able to film it on camera, and then the 6th time I was able to catch it on camera. But it's quite dangerous, and that means I don't dare to drive this car with the auto steer functionality, because I think it's more dangerous than helpful. So yeah, BYD, you should fix this. Going southward on the E6, where we don't have, you know, that headwind we had on our way northward, I think there's less noise off the wing mirrors, which makes sense. So I mean, it's quite quiet. It is quite quiet at motorway speeds, not only at lower speeds. So it's not a bad car to travel with on, you know, a long trip. But we're gonna see with this battery pack now once we take the exit here, and then we connect to the chargers first, see what charging speed we get after just passive preconditioning or passive conditioning of the battery. We do active preconditioning in another test. Not sure if this car has that, but this is on an 800 volt architecture and should have a peak charging speed of 230 kilowatts. And also lastly, before we stop here, I just want to say that these seats are actually really comfortable. Like the ride comfort in this car, it's a lot more comfort oriented than something like a Tesla Model Y, which I think is this car's main competitor. Okay, so we're here at the charger and the car has its charge port on the rear passenger side, and that has to be some of the easiest and smoothest one-handed connecting to a charger here. No tension in the cable at all. So we arrived here with 35% state to charge. This car is on an 800 volt architecture, though the nominal battery pack is less than 600 volts, but you know, it's closer to 800 than 600. No, 400. Well, it really isn't. But it's still, they still call it an 800 volt architecture. Like, I mean, volt architectures aren't, you know, very specific. It's like the closest voltage to the battery pack and the components. So either like 400 or 800. Some 400 volt, you know, architectures are 300, low 300. Some, you know, 800 volt architectures are high 900s or even above 900. So that really depends. So we're here with 35% state of charge. No preconditioning of the battery, so it's going to be interesting to see. Now it's about 2 degrees Celsius outside, so not super cold. So are we going to get a decent charging speed? I don't know what the charge curve of this car looks like at all. We're getting 105 kilowatts at 35% state to charge, which is interesting because when we connected here earlier before I started this test, we were getting like 93 kilowatts at like 92%, which was very impressive. This though is not. Even, you know, with a coldish battery pack where you're not preconditioning the battery, that is lower than I expected. Okay guys, so let me tell you what happened. So I was going north here on the E6, and as usual, you know, driving with auto steer activated, the car's ADAS systems, and I was just looking down for a second at the trip computer, the one that is reset or only shows the past 50 kilometers. For a second, like a brief second, and I've driven here a million times, guys, and what happened is that suddenly I was in the guardrail, like all of a sudden. I'm going to show you guys the damage now. Not too bad. I mean, luckily, it wasn't a, I don't know if you can even call it a crash. Like, we barely touched it here, but you can see there's damage across the whole car, the door, the rear door, and also the rims and all the way back here. So, I mean, it's not big damage, but it is damage. But what's really scary is that we hit the guardrail, and you're like, how the heck did you do that? And I'm like, I don't know, because I was looking down at the trip computer for just a second with auto steer activated, and then we were suddenly in the guardrail. So right after it happened, I'm like, holy crap, shit, how did this happen? What's going on? And I was like, okay, did I just, you know, not pay attention? Was it my fault? You know, am I a bad driver? And, you know, I drove just, you know, collecting my thoughts. And then something weird happened, like auto steer engaged, and then it started struggling, like especially when the turns go, or the motorway went curving. And then it would just ping pong in the lane, like really quickly. And then once it was like either ping ponging towards the left or the right, auto steer with no audible or visual warning would just disengage while you have momentum either to the right or left. This happened another 5 times. I tried to film it, but it just happened completely random. But the 6th time it happened, I'm going to overlay the video for you guys now. This may not happen in the same sense as this happened when I was driving, because I swear I was looking down for a brief second and then we were suddenly in the guardrail. So either way, there is an issue with the calibration of the ADAS in this car, because it's not supposed to ping pong. And what I think is happening is that other systems are intervening. So once it starts ping ponging, it does get, you know, a little bit of momentum where it starts ping ponging more and more, and then the system just gives up completely. I haven't driven this car much, and especially not on the motorway. Now I know it's like that, so I don't have auto steer engaged at all, because it's just dangerous. And sometimes it was even worse, where it's like engaging, disengaging, disengaging. You're just fighting the steering wheel. So I've contacted BYD. They're gonna, you know, take out the log of this car. They're gonna have it back tomorrow, so there's not gonna be any more testing. You know, gave them notice right away. They're gonna take out a log, and maybe they have an explanation or not. If they do, I'm gonna insert that here for you guys. But if not, there's a real issue with the ADAS calibration of the BYD Sealion. Okay guys, now let's do the calculations to see how much range we were able to get out of this BYD Sealion 7 today, the all-wheel drive excellence model. So as I said earlier in the video, this car doesn't have, a normal trip computer, so we do have to do the calculations. We used 57% battery, and the battery pack is 91.3 kilowatt hours usable, and that turns out to be about 52.041 kilowatt hours. And then we divide that by the actual distance covered, and we subtract 3% for heat loss and discharging losses. That gives us a theoretical range under today's conditions of 329 kilometers, which I think is okay. I mean, I was expecting more out of this car because it does have, kind of an aerodynamic shape. And also, the WLTP rated range of this car isn't that great either. So, not expecting too much, but I was expecting a little bit more. Also, it's not that cold now. It's, plus degrees Celsius today. We had maybe a small section where it was around 0 and -1, but most of the trip it was like a few degrees plus. And also the conditions were great, like dry roads, sunny skies. So yeah, I mean, it's not the worst. I think a Tesla Model Y and also a lot of the other competitors would probably manage more range with a smaller battery pack. So guys, let me know what you think about the range today and also the ADAS system of this car. And hopefully I inserted, a comment from BYD explaining what happened, because it was quite scary. I've never been close to hitting the guardrail before, and today hitting it, yeah, that was kind of sketchy. But I have to say, I have not had this experience with any other BYDs. Like the Tang I drove many years ago, and also the Tang I just had a few weeks ago, did not act in this way with the ADAS system at all. And that's why I think, is this car specific? It may be this model, but like I've been critical to other cars about the ADAS, and now it actually caused an accident. Would I have been able to avoid the accident? Possibly, if I knew how the ADAS system worked and had it turned off, but that kind of defeats the point of having ADAS, right? With auto steer and functions like that. So guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please drop me a thumbs up down below, and for more car content, as always, please subscribe. See you guys later, and goodbye.